Even though week one's not over, it's time to take a look ahead at week two. Texas and Michigan, one of the biggest games of the year, is on the schedule, and it's going to be a really interesting game for both teams. They had different starts, and this is a Michigan team that obviously is the defending champs, and they're playing a Texas team that is looking to become the new champs in 2024. This is a very interesting matchup between these two, a game in which you saw two teams coming in with different perspectives. Texas obviously dominated against Colorado State, 52 to nothing. And then you saw Michigan struggle with Fresno State and then ultimately win 30 to 10. Now you can't take a ton of stock from a week one, but there definitely were some things that, created some concerns for the Michigan side of things. And we will find out how quickly they can bounce back from some of those struggles. Texas is currently a 6.5 point favorite as I'm recording this. And it's interesting that that line maybe isn't, and actually, it's really a good example, a good reason why you shouldn't overreact to one game because this fact that this is 6.5 tells me that there are some things that people need to consider before they're just going to jump on Texas. Now, Texas is a team that is very talented offensively. They are very talented defensively, and there's plenty of players that are going to make an impact. Michigan also has guys that are going to make life difficult for them as well. Now, we'll dive into what are going to be some of the biggest things to keep an eye on for both sides. And for Texas, the biggest thing is going to be can their offensive line handle Michigan's defensive line, which is also the matchup to watch. While Michigan struggled against Fresno State, their defense played really well. And this is a group that has a ton of talent. When you look at Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham in the middle, they are going to be a problem. And with Texas going with their second and third string guys, you're going with backups because you lost a couple of players in the offseason to injury. You're looking at a rushing attack that is still trying to establish itself. And obviously, you can't do that until you play more games. This is going to be a tough group to do it against because Michigan is so talented. You also have some pretty good edge players for Michigan as well. Josiah Stewart is going to be a problem in the passing attack. So if you're Texas, you have to find ways to keep Quinn Ewers upright. You have to find ways to establish the run, and that is what is going to start up front. Michigan, like I said, has such a good defense this year that it's going to be tough. That is going to be a tough test. And the fact that it's on the road for Texas, that's another obstacle that could provide some challenges. But again, Texas has the talent to make that happen. It's just a matter of are they going to be able to handle those matchups? Because if Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are living in the backfield, then guys like Blue aren't going to be able to make big plays. And I trust that Steve Sarkisian has plays lined up for how to combat that and how to uh, counter against any of those types of players and how to get them out of position. But you also have to understand how good those players are. And we saw that against Fresno State. The question for Michigan is going to be can the offense get going? Because this defense could play really well against Texas and slow that team down. But if they're not able to get any offense going, it's not going to matter. Texas is going to win this game because they're going to score points. The thing about this game, Texas will put points on the board. That much is inevitable. The question is that if Michigan can get their own offense to put up points as well, because this is a solid Texas defense, maybe not the same perception as the Michigan defense has, but also at the same time, you have some players up front that are going to provide plenty of challenges for both sides. And that's probably the biggest thing with this game is that you have a ton of talent on both sides of the football for both teams. And it's just a matter of which one of those groups can handle the other better. And Michigan and the offense, we saw what happened last week. But again, you can't take a ton of stock because I think that Michigan truly knew they were going to just make things pretty vanilla against Fresno State. They might have had to open things up more than they were anticipating, but also the fact that you have two quarterbacks tells me that you have some questions about what that offense is going to look like, who's going to be your guy. I think people expected Alex Orji to be better than he was, and there's part of me that believes that he maybe didn't shine as much in the fall camp as they wanted him to. And the rushing attack, maybe takes a little bit of a step back. And Fresno tips, you have to hats off to Fresno State. You have to give them a lot of credit. They played really hard and they played really well in the first half. It's just that Michigan ultimately had too many good players for them to combat that. And that's going to be tough to win football games if you're just inferior in talent and eventually you just get worn down. Now, when you're looking at who are going to be some of these players to keep an eye on for the Michigan Wolverines, everything is going to start with the defensive side of the ball. And that's not really a surprise, but at the same time, you want more of hope for the offense because you need to be able to score points. And I'm not saying that you want to get in a shootout with Texas, but at the same time, you want to be able to compete in this game. And you can't rely on your defense to do everything for too long because eventually it's just going to get out of hand and your defense is going to get tired of having to do this. And you can't rely on them to score points either. You have to be the reason. But the defense is going to get things started really. And Will Johnson is one of those players that when you look at certain players just make things look easier than others. And Will Johnson is one of those guys. He is someone who can essentially erase a wide receiver if needed. And his matchup against some of these players like Isaiah Bond, like a guy like Jonte Cook. Those are going to be players that are really fun to watch. And Will Johnson has the pleasure or displeasure of having to cover them. Now, there is probably going to be some attention focus opposite of him because Steve Sarkisian obviously is confident in his team, confident in his abilities, but he also knows that respect is definitely deserved Will Johnson's way. And Will Johnson is someone who can make you pay if you're not careful. He is someone who can make a big time impact on this game. And he is someone who has proven time and time again that he is going to be a problem. He has a bright future, a future that should probably put him in the first round of next year's NFL draft. And he is a big reason why Michigan had success last week, as well as most of his career. The defense, like I said before, features a number of players that are going to be a problem. The one guy that I will focus on, though, is Josiah Stewart. He is more of that impact player when it comes to rushing passer. And that's going to be interesting going against the talent that Texas Hill. Calvin Banks is going to be a problem for him. And that matchup probably dictates a lot of how successful the passing attack is going to be. Because again, Will Johnson is good, but if he has to cover for too long and too much, this is going to be a game that goes heavily in Texas' favor. So you have to keep an eye on that. The defensive line plays a huge role, and the linebackers do as well, which is why you keep an eye out for a guy like Ernest Hausman. See what those guys can do up front to make life a little bit more challenging for Texas. Switch up the looks, maybe send more pressure. Don't give up those big plays. That's going to be a huge thing. And again, this is going to be a grind. Even if Michigan's offense is going to be able to put up points, you're still facing an explosive Texas defense. Excuse me, their offense that's going to be able to put up points and make you work every single play. The offense is obviously where things need to get figured out, whether it's Warren or Orgy at the quarterback position, that needs to get sorted out. And also, people outside of Colston Loveland need to step up and play a bigger role. The wide receivers must be better than they were last week. Colston Loveland is good, but you can't rely on him to do everything. The rushing attack, maybe Donovan Edwards is going to have a better game. Khalil Mullins is obviously someone who stepped up last week. And the rushing attack obviously is once again a solid part of this offense, but the quarterback position is going to play a bigger role in that. And that's going to be interesting to see how this group responds to that challenge. And we'll see exactly what we should expect from them. But again, Michigan's offense must be better than they were last week. And the defense needs to continue doing what it's doing. Obviously, there's some things they could do better. But when you're playing a team like Texas, and when you look at the players that Texas is going to put on the field this week, you know that you are in for a long game. Quinn Ewers is going to get things done. It's just a matter of when, not if. And the players that he has available next to him are going to be really fun to watch. A player to keep an eye on, Garrett Gibson. We all knew he was going to play a bigger role this year after those two injuries that we talked about before. Losing CJ Baxter still hurts. I think a lot of people really wish that he was not injured, but having Jared Gibson and Blue are going to be consolation prizes in a way, and that's going to help Quinn Ewers and that offense find balance. Again, you're going against a really good Michigan front that will make life a little bit more challenging than you maybe anticipated, but at the same time, you are going to have plenty of talent to combat some of the players that Michigan will put on the field, and those are guys that are going to step up. The rushing attack is going to be the X factor until further notice for the Texas Longhorns. The wide receivers obviously are very good. Isaiah Bond, Jonte Cook, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden. You have a number of elite players and plenty of speed that are going to put a lot of pressure on Michigan's defensive backs, including Will Johnson. Will Johnson is going to be tested, but at the same time, I wouldn't get too comfortable with throwing his way because that's when you kind of get lulled to sleep and you make a poor decision. But again, Texas is going to have plenty of success. And the other thing is, Sark knows what he's doing. He's obviously a very good play caller, and he knows exactly how to get his guys in good position. The defense is really what can make or break this game. And I think that when you're looking at the Michigan struggles offensively, that bodes well for a Texas defense that really shut down Colorado State. I don't think a lot of people were anticipating that level of dominance, but it's also not surprising. And you saw some players step up in a big way. And again, it's only 1 week, so we can't put too much stock into it. But guys like Jade Barron, you kind of expected that. Barron is one of those guys who's a veteran. You know what to expect from him. He understands the philosophy, he understands what it takes to win football games, and that's going to help you a lot here. Anthony Hill Jr. is a guy that I talked about in the preseason, and a lot of people know his name, but I think he's going to be more of a household name when this season is over. He is someone that's going to have to play a big role because Michigan wants to run the football, because they're going to be physical at the line of scrimmage. Anthony Hill is just one of the guys that's going to have to step up. Now, you also have to keep in mind you lost two NFL defensive tackles. So that position is going to be a big time X factor for this Texas defense. If they're able to be physical up front and those defensive tackles are able to compete at a high level and slow down this Michigan offense, specifically the rushing attack, then you're going to feel a lot better about what Texas can do. Now, when it comes to predicting this game, Texas is a 6.5 point favorite, and that's a line I'm very curious to watch this week. We will see how much that line changes. Again, Michigan did not look great for most of the game against Fresno State, but at the same time, they have talent to compete, and it's going to be interesting to see what they can do to throw Texas off their game. I just don't know if they can do it for that long. Maybe they get a couple turnovers that switch the momentum in their favor. Maybe they do certain other things that surprise the Longhorns, but I think Texas right now is the better team. I think that they're going to go into the big house and win this game. But there are definitely things long term that I'm going to keep an eye on because I know that both teams are capable of competing at a high level. It's just that one team, Texas, feels like they're in a better spot to do that.